Hi, welcome to Fusion. As you can see, we are having our tea break as well. Ronald, what's the great idea with this lager Rooibos tea?
Well, Rooibos tea is a favorite tea break for me, and usually I drink lager because lager is a how the trekkers used to do security in the day when they were going through South Africa. So at night they would actually form a little circle with the wagons,
Yeah.
and that would be their security and how they would secure themselves at night. So we're having a tea break using Rooibos tea, and we're talking about cybersecurity.
Fantastic. I mean, you know, when I think about cybersecurity myself, I'm a finance business development guy. So I see this scary guy with this white little mask. That's cybersecurity, and it's a bit difficult to really fathom what to do. But let's start off by telling me, what does cybersecurity mean in a business context?
So for a business, when you talk about cybersecurity, people usually explain to it in terms that a normal person doesn't explain. They actually talk about something called confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And I can see, as I said those words to you, your eyes glazed over.
No, but I mean, we all know those terms. Those are exactly the thing. We think we've signed an NDA and we've done this and we protect it.
Yeah. So basically, I'll explain to it. It's about what happens. So with a business, cybersecurity, the impact of it is you have loss, which you should understand. It's, profit and loss. You've got a balance sheet, and loss is a bad thing and profit is a good thing. So security is about loss. And what is that loss? Loss is when somebody steals your information. You obviously do not want your information stolen. So loss is important. That's the first thing. The second thing is errors. Okay, you don't want people to make errors. Okay, your errors that you want are need to be minimized. You don't want to pay a guy $1,000 when you should be paying him $100.
Yes.
So, and it's very easy for a person to steal from you by creating errors in your business and making you do wrong payments, wrong things, and that's another part of it. Then the final part of it is failures. Now, failures are similar to outages, and outages are when things aren't there for you to use.
Yes.
And often people overlook that. But what you've got to remember about when you're not there and your system has failed, somebody can step into your shoes, pretend to be you, and take your information from you. And basically, not only that, they can steal from you by pretending to be you. So as an example, it's very easy when you're not available for somebody to steal from you. I'll give you an example. You've got a payments clerk.
Yes.
And that payment clerk gets a phone call from somebody and said, listen here, you need to pay me 100,000 Rand for this invoice that I'm going to email to you now. And if you do not pay that right now, Kirthesh is going to fire you. So the person says, oh, let me look at this email. And he says, oh, it's 100,000 Rand. Kirthesh said he needs to personally confirm everything over 10,000 Rand. Let me phone him. So you phone him, you phone Kirthesh, or the payment clerks phone Kirthesh, and Kirthesh is somewhere where there's no LTE reception or cell phone, and he doesn't answer his cell phone.
Yes, normally when I'm playing golf.
Oh,
Generally,
correct.
that's when I get the call. Just about to tee off and somebody phones me to say, can I do this?
And now let's say you're not available. That payment clerk says, hey, if I don't do this payment, Kirthesh is going to fire me. So he makes the payment. And he's made the payment because you haven't been available, or because that process hasn't been available to follow. And that 100,000 Rand's gone. So that is an example of that type of...
I mean, that's a reality. It actually happened to me. Stellenbosch, they take offense if I pull out your cell phone on a tee box and start answering a question. I don't know what it is about Stellenbosch, but playing there, I had to stick to the rules. Joburg, maybe we can pull out our phone on the tee box. Nobody really would worry.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting question that you raised there, Ronald, because I, as a layman, would think, I've got a business, I've got an internet connection, okay? And the internet connection breaks. So I then think, well, my business is now disconnected. I'm not at risk because I'm actually disconnected. My site's on its own, and therefore I don't know. What you're saying is that if I'm in a disconnected state, somebody online can pretend to be me now. Because my particular site is offline, my servers are offline, my website is off. Whatever I have in-house or in the data center is then essentially you cut off. And then you're saying somebody else can then pretend to be you, produce and effectively pretend to be you. So that's, you never think about it like that, but connectivity in that sense and security sort of go hand in hand is what you say.
Correct. One of the biggest things, the pillars about making yourself more secure is about making your failures and outages as little as possible. Because when you minimize that, you become more secure. Now, many people don't classify that as a security problem. They think it's some type of operational problem and they're going to catch up and make their money when things come back in again.
Yes.
But, during that time period is a very vulnerable time period for your business. The other thing that people also miss is because they keep on focusing around cybersecurity as a vulnerability, as about you generated errors and people are going to scam you, which is correct. You do have programs that are vulnerable, that haven't been updated, haven't been patched. But also the very more important thing about loss and how you deal with it and errors is the human component of it. Because most often your systems are running perfectly, but a human sits there and makes an incorrect decision about how to apply that technology. And that is most often the compromise that people have. They're basically socially engineered over the telephone, over a conversation, via email to actually give you information that you shouldn't be privy to. So right now, there's something called business email compromise, where people introduce an instruction into a previous email and modify that email to give the impression that everybody's agreed to an instruction and confirm that instruction. So people engineer you to actually steal from you or make your systems unavailable and basically there's multiple ways about it. And you're just not limited in cybersecurity to one thing, which is vulnerabilities. You've got to think about how outages are meant to be mitigated and reduced, and the other components as well.
So is that so going back to that, because essentially what you're saying is that your traffic is insecure. There's all these risk errors. How would a business really go about protecting themselves against what you call is an error, a failure, in terms of your thing? What would you have to do?
So the one component that I would suggest you do is that you actually make your security more an operational security, not a separate department. Because if you do business securely, that's the way to do it. You don't say, well, I'm doing business and how do I secure myself afterwards? Because you're bound to actually get into a situation where you don't. So in a networking component, which I sort of like do most of my work in, I recommend people use SD-WAN. And an SD-WAN ticks a lot of the security boxes because it can be designed to make your links more reliable so that you don't go down less often. They can secure it using encryption, so there's the possibility of your data being having errors introduced by somebody who has made
so encryption, let's get that. Encryption meaning you have the data leaving your business premises to a particular location is encrypted, so essentially nobody can read that. Effectively it becomes dark.
Well, it's not only a question about reading it, but modifying it.
Modifying it, as well as information coming back.
Modifying it before the intended recipient receives it.
Okay.
And that's the way. And then the other component about it is that a lot of times when you are building a network and you're doing it manually, you introduce errors and oversights. Okay. Now, SD-WAN is automated, and in that automation, you reduce the ability for a obvious oversight to be introduced into the network, which is where SD-WAN becomes a very good security proposition for a business to reduce the ability for people to come in. It's much the same as building a lager around your business and introducing a lager concept.
That's why we get back to the lager of your Rooibos tea. By the way, it's very good.
Yeah.
So who then you would suggest they need to use in terms of partnering with and why?
So the what I would suggest you do is that you actually utilize South Africans and South African companies who are knowledgeable about the South African environment. Now, reality speaking, if you go to McKinsey or Gartner or even vendors from overseas like Cisco or Fortinet, they have absolutely no clue on what our environment is. If you go to an American and you tell them about load shedding, they look at you as if you're mad about why you got load shedding, and they've got no practical realization or concept about what load shedding does for a business. They have no knowledge of how local South Africans are being scammed. They have absolutely no knowledge about it. And one of the things about South Africans right now is I just read a news report. We are one of the top 5 locations in the world where people get scammed. So South Africans and South Africans associated with doing business in South Africa, technology in South Africa, and security in South Africa are the most appropriate people to use. So what I would suggest you do is you find a South African provider of South African services that can actually assist and help you in solving your problems. Don't go and farm for a name brand that is a big European brand or an American brand, because they're not going to be knowledgeable in solving your problems.
So in other words, it's more relevant for the market conditions that we're living in.
Correct.
More up to date in terms of the risks that exist in our environment versus anywhere else.
Correct.
And then just finally, what is the simplest and easiest way for a business to start protecting themselves? I mean, the one condition I have for South Africa is that yes, there's lovely, complicated, complex solutions. That also requires technical skill. It also requires a lot of expertise, and that a lot of time. So when these events happen, one needs to then say, well, what is the quickest, easiest solution that we can implement that doesn't become a burden later in the life cycle of the product?
So I'll go to, it's very simple and it's actually not that complex. Many South African companies, even prominent Cape Town service providers and technology companies have been hit by malware and ransomware. Ransomware is where you've been compromised and you then have to pay to have your data back. So there is a solution around domain name services, which is how you connect to the internet and the internet tells you where to go to. So if you change that domain name services that you're using from your local ISP to one called Quad 9, which is 9.9.9.9, that domain name services, which is actually hosted locally in Johannesburg, Durban, and Cape Town, will provide you the ability to secure yourself, because when you've got ransomware or malware compromise happening in your business, that prevents you from actually getting to where the command and control server of that malware or ransomware is located. So it stops it dead in its tracks.
Okay.
And it's something that a business can do. And if a business does that, the probability of them being compromised is dramatically reduced.
So that's something simple, right?
Yes,
it's not
simple.
A complex thing.
It's not a simple thing, and you can it reduces your exposure and your probability of being compromised dramatically. And it's not a difficult thing to do. And also, if you implement that in your home environment and your home router, the same applies. It's something that will dramatically improve and make your security better. And it's something that anybody can do. And it's a tip that I always give people to start off right there, because you don't want to be the guy that's in the headlines on News 24 about being ransomed.
Absolutely. And you know what? Let's be honest. A lot of these companies that are ransomed one has to ask the question, do they not have the most sophisticated, most expensive firewall or other product or whatever that's in there?
Correct.
Sometimes they miss the simple stuff.
Correct.
That essentially can make a huge difference.
Yes.
Well, Ronald, thank you very much for those insights. We're going to carry on having our Rooibos tea and discussing other issues related to connectivity, SD-WAN, as well as cybersecurity issues. But I think what's there, we're going to put the invitation out. Anybody needs some advice, some tips, they can contact you directly.
Correct.
Ronald.
Yes.
And Ronald, you're prepared to answer questions. Correct. And assist with your insights.
Yes.
Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your visit and your tea break as we enjoy ours. And let us put a lager around your business.